DW Africa Link.
From 15% to 4% in just 1 month. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? But Zimbabwe has just pulled off what many economists thought couldn't be done, achieving single-digit inflation for the first time in nearly 4 decades. It's a stunning turnaround for a country that once saw inflation spiral into the billions.
It has made life better for us because you can actually save, even though the amounts are a bit low. The other advantage that we now have is if I go to the shops or any retail outlet, I can find all the basic commodities available.
It's quite difficult to believe it, actually. Yeah, because in terms of our daily lives, what we are seeing in the shops, the buying power of people, it's not translating to that. We have not yet seen it because, when inflation goes down, we must see it manifesting in people's buying power, the ability to buy, and price is going down. But as we speak, I think last year when we were approaching the festive season, we saw prices going up. Yeah. So my biggest question is the inflation projections real? We need to interrogate that, I think, because what we must be seeing, in real life experiences of people is not there.
The inflation rate in Zimbabwe has, for once, moved to a single-digit rate, which is something commendable because it brings stability in pricing for most government employees.
How did they do it? And can it last? We're diving into Zimbabwe's economic miracle. I am Ajuatin Kramar Domina, and you're welcome to Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
To put this in perspective, the last time Zimbabwe saw inflation this low was in 1988, when it stood at 7%, instead of 1997, which has widely been reported. Since then, the country has weathered economic storms that saw inflation reach incomprehensible heights. Now, official data shows a remarkable drop to 4% in January of 2026, down from 15% just 1 month earlier. The Reserve Bank credits tighter fiscal discipline and consistent monetary reforms. But here's a question on everyone's mind. How did this happen? And more importantly, can it last? To help us unpack this economic puzzle, I'm joined by Happiness Zengeni. She's a business and financial analyst. We also have Privilege Mushanhiri. He's DW's correspondent in Zimbabwe. Welcome to the both of you. Privilege, let me begin with you. Zimbabwe has a very youthful population. The last figures I checked as of 2025 said that nearly 65% of the population were under 35 years. I am assuming that this is more than half of the entire population who may not have experienced inflation this low before. How does it feel among citizens?
Yeah, it is a mixed bag, Ajo. For this generation that we may talk about, that are within this period that we are talking about, where Zimbabwe is said to have recorded the lowest inflation, you have a generation where most of these people that are within the generation of 20 years or going to 25 or 30, most of them, they are not formally employed. And for them to really feel that, yes, of course, this inflation figure is going to impact on my income, probably is going to change my fortunes, and it is difficult for them to really speak to that, because most of these people that are within this bracket, you may find them, they are not formally employed, and they are not in sectors where things can be really tangible, and you can say, I'm benefiting from the stability. Yes, of course, the stability can be felt in terms of price not going up willy-nilly like we experienced in the past, where probably in one day you would have 3 exchange rates. that's the stability, maybe probably that they may say, yes, of course, things now are a bit stable. But in terms of them really saying, I am enjoying this, the lowest figure in terms of inflation, it's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell. I'm going to come back to you to tell us exactly what the people on the grounds have been telling you. I know you've been speaking to some of them, but quickly, Happiness, let me bring you in. Would you mind to share with us how old you were when the 2008 economic recession happened?
2008, I was 2008. I was 24.
Ooh, okay. So if we go back in time, you did experience how bad and terrible the situation was. Can you do a quick comparative analysis between then, how things were, and then now that the country has recorded its lowest inflation, how things are?
Okay, so between 2008 and what's happening now, 2008, we were strictly on monocurrency. So there was the Zim dollar, and because the central bank then was printing money to help fund government projects, that's the reason why inflation was going up. It's different from now because now we are using a multi-currency system, the US dollar and the local Zimbabwe dollar. So those are two different dynamics altogether. 2008 was hyperinflation caused by government activity, quasi-fiscal activities by the central bank. 2026 or 2025, those activities have gone away and we are in a multi-currency environment.
Let's come back to present day and talk about how we are experiencing 4.1 just within a month when we have experienced 15%. How did they happen?
So those are base effects. So it's a collision between maths and discipline. So if you know that inflation is a 12-month rolling calculation, in January 2025, we had a massive spike in prices, and that has fallen out of the calculation window. So those are the base effects. So naturally, the annual rate also collapses. But where we have to celebrate, yes, these are base effects on the annual inflation, but where we have to celebrate is the month-on-month, which is at 0% in January. That actually means that the RBZ is disciplined enough. They're not printing any new money to fuel demand. So prices have literally flatlined across the economy.
Privilege tells us that there is mixed reaction on the ground, in that a lot of people are not seeing the translation of this low inflation in their day-to-day activities. Would you say that's a problem of cost inflation or monetary policy issue?
Okay, so there's a lot of factors behind this, but mainly the key issue is that we are a multi-currency environment. And in that multi-currency, the split between US dollar use and local currency use is 80 to 85% US dollar use and about 15% to local currency. And within the informal sector, I know Privilege spoke about a lot of unemployed youths, a lot of informal sector. With an informal sector as high as 86%, that actually means that a lot of their transactions are US dollar transactions. So people will not feel these are ZIG numbers. The 4.1 is local currency inflation. So people will only feel once the US dollar starts moving up or down, the impact of that US dollar on pricing. That's when people will really still will feel if it's instability or its stability. At the moment, because of multi-currency and that effectively we are almost a dollarized nation, these inflation numbers won't make sense to people. It's only now that government workers are mostly paid in local currency, but for the majority of the people, they are paid in US dollars, and the informal sector almost always operates on a US dollar transaction basis.
Privilege, you are speaking to some people, businesses, ordinary people. What is it exactly that they've been sharing with you about the distinction between the figures we have heard and the translation or the reality on the ground?
All right. Speaking to ordinary people on the ground, I would want to pick from where Happiness left. You find those that are in the civil service. they have kind of had a bit of a relief because we have not had a fluctuation of the exchange rate in the manner it used to be in the previous years. Because the central bank has kind of maintained some discipline, you find that the exchange rate is being maintained probably at a constant of between 26 to 27 against $1 US. So they are able at least to predict that if I earn my salary at the end of the month, they could maybe probably plan some way. But you find that because of the mismatch between those that earn in the ZiG and those that earn in US dollar, the one that earns in ZiG still need to look for US dollars because some goods and services are still being paid exclusively in US dollar. For instance, if one earns in ZiG and they want to buy fuel, it's difficult. You cannot find a fuel station that is selling fuel in local currency. All fuel stations, they sell fuel in US dollar. So if one drives a car and they are a civil servant, they still need to change their money to US dollar in order for them to purchase fuel. So these are the kind of things that you find that for one who earns in ZiG and do not have access to US dollar, they still need to go and exchange their ZiG to US dollar. And at the end of the day, because when they go on the market, when the government pays them, it is at the rate, at the bank rate, at the official rate. But they can only access the US dollar when they go to the parallel market, of which at the parallel market, they have to get $1 US paying 30 ZiG or above that. So at the end of the day, that's where now you hear people saying that, of course, yes, we are hearing this inflation figure of 4.1, but at the end of the day, when it comes to what they are benefiting, it's a bit difficult. Then you go to the US dollar component. If somebody is earning in US dollar, they are not feeling this 4.1% because at the end of the day, the 4.1% is only calculated using the local currency. So those are the mismatches that are within the economy because of the multi-currency system.
Thank you for that privilege. Happiness, let me come to you. For the person who is currently not in Zimbabwe but want to understand this ZiG, when it was introduced, we were told it's the gold-backed currency that is coming to replace the Zimbabwean dollar. How then are we seeing that the US dollar is still significantly the major currency that the Zimbabwean economy is using, even though there is a ZiG? How do you explain that?
It takes time. So they know that there's still a whole trauma within that local currency experience where people used to experience episodes of high inflation since the 90s. So it was a deliberate thing not to increase the money supply of the local currency. They backed it to support that. So ZiG is backed by gold and reserves to support that in order to then, it's a confidence game really. So with time, I mean, you've heard talk about them trying to introduce monocurrency by 2030. So with time, they will increase that, and we hope that ZiG will become the main major currency of transaction within the economy. But for now, it's not. It's at 15%.
But why is the US dollar so dominant in Zimbabwe?
It's a trust issue, like I said, past traumas. So that's a stable currency. It's a store of value. It's an acceptable medium of exchange, especially with unbanked communities in the informal sector. So there's a lot of trust because we've experienced, if you are to check Zimbabwe's history, we've experienced high inflation since the 90s. Up until today, less the years of dollarization in 2009 to about 2017, we have just generally had a period of high inflation in the country. So people don't trust any local currency by whatever name that they would introduce. They wouldn't trust it. So it takes time. So the dollar is more accepted. It's stable. It's not ours. So we know that they will not print the money anyway. So we trust to use that currency because it's a store of value.
I want to ask one question about the Reserve Bank, but quickly, I have this in mind. If I don't ask it, I may forget. What will it take for Zimbabweans or for the government to win the trust of Zimbabweans in their currency?
In the currency, it has to be sustained stability. So to celebrate just a month of single-digit inflation is not enough. To celebrate 6 times cover on your base money reserves, it's also not enough. So there has to be sustained stability where we go for about 3 to 4 years with that same stability. Then people will then begin to trust the local currency again. But for now, people just think, okay, this is just temporary tightness. Elections are coming up. It will be election campaigning period next year. So people are just saying, let's wait and see. And it's also coming at a cost where this tightened monetary policy from government, you've seen from the central bank, you've seen government delaying payments to contractors. We've also seen government not increasing civil service salaries. So once those pressure points, let's say civil servants add pressure on government to increase salaries, will the RBZ maintain stability and not print money? So it has to be sustained stability for people to trust them that government can be able to function without the need to print money or to resort to the RBZ as lender of last resort. So it's going to take time. It's not a 1 month event. It's not even a 2-year event. It will take about 3 to 5 years.
Thank you for that. Privilege, is that a sense you're getting from the people you spoke to, that they need stability in order to trust the system?
Certainly, yes. I think Zimbabweans have gone through a lot in terms of, I think you may understand that the ZiG is now the 6th attempt to introduce a local currency in the country. And because of what people have experienced where they lost savings over the years, you have money in the bank, and suddenly when you wake up in the morning, you have lost everything that you had in savings because of these currency changes and instability in the economy. This is what has then knocked off the whole trust in whatever government tries to introduce, because at the end of the day, the people that suffer, that lose, are ordinary people. And it was not easy, especially in 2008 and 2009. You had loads of cash, but you couldn't buy anything meaningful.
Happiness, let me come to you. You've spoken to us about what it would take for the government to win the trust of citizens back, which is the stability that you've mentioned. But how would that stability happen? Talk to us about what policies or measures the government need to put in place over time to ensure that we have that stability that can secure the trust of citizens.
So for now, they'll need to maintain that multi-currency system beyond 2030, and then stop and maintain the printing. Ensure that taxes are paid in ZiG as well to push up demand for local currency. At the moment, taxes are mostly paid in US dollar now because companies are reporting sales of about 95% in US dollars. But once they ensure that taxes are paid in local currency, this will feed through demand because there's just no demand for ZiG at the moment. You only need your local currency maybe to buy electricity and to pay your city council rates. Beyond that, everything else, fuel, all the supermarket goods are priced in US dollars. So they need to show up demand of the local currency through a tax formula where businesses are compelled to pay taxes in ZiG. That will mean that they will now require consumers to also buy in ZiG. Then they also need to ensure that interest rates are kept low. At the moment, interest rates are high at 35%. This is against inflation of 4.1%. So businesses are unable to borrow at ZIG level. So once they lower the interest rates, that will stimulate demand for ZIG as well, because companies are able to borrow for their working capital requirements.
Oh.
Zimbabwe is an informalized country. We need to deal with the informal sector in order to make them accept the local currency. But at the moment, we don't have any formalization structure in place. So that will take time. Like I said, 5 to 10 years, that will take time.
Thank you very much for speaking to us, both of you. You heard Happiness Ngeni. She is an economist, business and financial analyst. We also were joined by Privilege Mushanhiri. He's DW correspondent in Zimbabwe. Thank you, both of you.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
But here's the real test. Are everyday Zimbabweans actually feeling this change in their wallet? The numbers tell one story, but what about life on the ground? Let's hear what people are saying.
It has made life better for us because you can actually save, even though the amounts are a bit low. The other advantage that we now have is if I go to the shops or any retail outlet, I can find all the basic commodities available. With the income that we have, you can actually budget at least 10% of your income, which has made life better for us. At least we have hope than being in a situation whereby you have the money, but we don't have the basic commodities in the shops, or you have the basic commodities in the shops, but we don't have the income or any money we can use to buy goods.
You know, it's quite difficult to believe it, actually. Yeah, because in terms of our daily lives, you know, what we are seeing in the shops, you know, the buying power of people, it's not translating to that. We have not yet seen it, because, you know, when inflation goes down, we must see it manifesting in people's buying power, you know, the ability to buy, and price is going down. But as we speak, I think last year when we were approaching the festive season, we saw prices going up. Yeah. So my biggest question is the inflation projections real? We need to interrogate that, I think, because what we must be seeing, you know, in real life experiences of people is not there when it comes to these, you know, statistics that we are being given, to say it's at the lowest that it has ever been.
The inflation rate in Zimbabwe has for once moved to a single digit rate, which is something commendable because it brings stability in pricing for most government employees who earn in the local currency, the ZIG, and they're able now to plan and buy, meaning that their purchasing power has been improved by the stability of the ZIG, the local currency. Whilst this is so, for most other employees who earn in US dollar, the inflation rate not going up really does not make any difference, because the same prices that we were buying or purchasing goods in 2024 is still the same even up to now. So in US dollar component, we haven't really seen the benefit, but I would say overall it's good. But as to whether this will improve confidence in the local currency or confidence in the economy, I don't think so.
Africa is changing. Don't get left behind. Tune in to Africa Link.
So here's the bottom line. Zimbabwe has achieved something remarkable, but the hard work is far from over. As Happiness pointed out, stabilizing the local currency, sustaining low inflation, and also strengthening economic performance are critical to winning back citizens' trust. The question now is whether authorities can maintain this momentum. What's your take on Zimbabwe's economic turnaround, and what lessons can other African countries learn from this? We want to hear from you, so share your thoughts with us on Facebook at DW Africa, listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe. I am Ajua Tenkrama Domina. Many thanks for listening.
DW, made for minds.